Hey, how is everybody? I've got Stephanie Williams on the podcast today. She's the owner of the Book Belle, and we are both in a year-long certification program for human design. And when she and I were actually getting some support for tech, which that is one of my least favorite things to do, um, she had made some comments or mentioned some things, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like I've always wanted to have a bookkeeper on the podcast because I think that it is such a important and valuable resource that we have as business owners. And so I'm so glad you're here. And do you want to share just a little bit, Stephanie, about your journey into bookkeeping at all, or any of that?
Yeah, sure. First, I'm really excited to be here. So thanks, Erin, for having
Yeah,
me.
of course.
I know this really isn't a very sexy topic, so hopefully we can make it a little bit more fun to listen to. Um, but yeah, I actually just stumbled upon bookkeeping. I've always loved math and numbers, and I've been wanting to start a online business for a long time. I actually did a little bit of bookkeeping while I was doing my master's degree. And I just stumbled across Kristen Ingram. She has a course. She's been an accountant for 20 years and actually is a college professor. And so she's been my mentor into the bookkeeping world and an amazing mentor because she has so much experience. So
Yeah. Stephanie says that it's not a sexy topic. I think money, like, why aren't we making money a sexy topic? Okay, I get the like numbers and the spreadsheets and the P&L and the balance statement and all of that may not be sexy. And also like, yeah, like money's fun. And that's one of the things that I'm super passionate about is like changing that dynamic or flipping that script or reframing it, right? Like, so that money is something that we'll get into here in a bit, like that is not so highly charged emotionally, right? Because it keeps us from doing some of the things that are necessary and part of being a business owner. So, do you want to share and explain the difference? Because I think a lot of times people think, oh, okay, I need a CPA, but they don't know like the difference between a bookkeeper and a CPA and how both are so valuable in your business.
yes, yeah, I'd love to talk about that. And I do love that you brought that up. That yes, it probably should be a sexy topic. So
Let's make it sexy.
yeah.
Stephanie and I'll make it sexy together.
There you go. Yeah, so I actually didn't know really about this either before I started my business, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping we'll kind of touch on today is just how I think the industry is kind of let people down in that it's not talked about more, like,
Yeah.
and it's not really anyone's fault that they don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so bookkeepers are more record keepers, and I would say nowadays more software experts. They're just recording, they're doing day-to-day or monthly work. They're more, like, in touch with the business owner about,
Mhm.
like, details.
Mhm.
And accountants, if you have the right accountant, they not only file your taxes, but they should be there as a support to answer tax questions, give tax advice, and more of a strategy advisor for your finances and your
Mhm.
business growth.
Yeah.
And I have a lot I could say about this topic, so I don't know how much you want me to go
Go
into.
for it. Yeah. Like it's
Okay.
totally like I think like one of the things I told Stephanie, like we've talked a lot offline, and one of the things I told her is that, you know, when I kind of got like the fire hose when I, started working for my family's construction business, like I had, financial planning, but that's very different than corporate finance or, books. And like, I literally didn't even know how to use QuickBooks. So like learned, truly on the job training, right? Like, where do I physically, like, how do I make deposit inside QuickBooks,
Yeah.
And like, why isn't it showing up in my ledger now? And, one of the things that I paid for, right, was some of that advice, whether it wasn't so much the bookkeeping, it was more so like the tax advice. And I really want to be able for people to get this information because I think it's one of those things where you kind of need to like absorb, at least for me, what I've noticed is like I have to absorb things on my own and then I can like do it and then I get clarity and then I have the questions to go and take to either the bookkeeper or to the CPA. So yeah, share away.
Yeah, okay. Well, and I hope you talk about your experience a little bit more later because I think your experience is like what I've seen. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people will relate to that. Like
Yeah.
not just now that you're a business owner, but your experience as, baptism by fire in that job.
That's a good way to describe
Yeah.
it.
I really feel like that's how it is. Even for me as a bookkeeper, I was trained, but actually doing people's books, I was like, oh, this is baptism by fire. Okay. So back to the accountants
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
bookkeepers. So, I just wanted to emphasize like how important I think each role is because I don't
Mhm.
know people know that. Um, the bookkeeper is important because they help you make sense of your financials. They're making sure everything's recorded and everything is being recorded correctly, so that you have reports, so that you have information you give to banks and to file your taxes. Um, they're in there like doing the doing, but that's I don't know. I think it's just so much more important than like people realize. And I think if you've been in business a while and like maybe like let's say you're growing in 5 years down the road and your books are like totally a disaster and you have no idea what's going on, then you know how important bookkeeping is. But when you're starting out, like it's easy to kind of, you know,
Yeah, put it to
forget
the
how
side or
important
like put it
yeah,
underneath the, you kind of like push it underneath the rug, like, and then you tie
yeah,
emotions with that, right? Like, and you're like,
yeah,
fear or shame or guilt or whatever you're feeling. And then it just kind of like piles up and we're just like, we'll deal with that later, you know?
exactly. Yep. And the bookkeeper is really there to help give you a clear picture. They help you
Hmm.
get that clear picture. They don't really give advice, unless they're like a CPA, but like I'm not a CPA, so I try not to give advice.
Yeah.
I just make sure the work is done.
Yeah.
But the accountant then takes that picture and then they use that picture to help give you advice and to help you save money on taxes. At least that's how I see it. But if you don't have time to make a clear picture as the CEO, the small business CEO, then the accountant can't really give you good direction or even file your taxes correctly. And what I see 80% of the time when I come in is the accountant is just guessing the best that they can with the data that you gave them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like a huge sense of relief
Because they have like a
that
partner, right? Like that they can
that
kind of like,
yeah, that
yeah,
I'll be there to help
yeah,
because I think, um, be nice to see the accountant's point of view too, that like
yeah.
they and the business owner, I think sometimes they don't really know. They think the tax accountant is gonna do all that, but the tax accountant doesn't do all of that. And, and I think, I really think small business owners need both. They need a really great accountant
Hmm.
and a bookkeeper. And when I go in to work with people, I usually, if they don't have an accountant, then I say, okay, like we need to find you one, or otherwise, like I won't work with them.
Yeah.
And then I have like a whole page of notes here, so I
That's
could
so
talk
good.
about this for a long time. Because I also think it's important to find the right accountant. That's something I don't know if we want to touch about it now or later, but that
Yeah,
not all
totally.
accountants are treated equally.
Yes. I have a, I'm like, okay, I want to say so many things. Number
Okay.
one, like as the business owner, it's your business, it's your baby, and like find people that are supportive to you. Like I can't tell you how many times that I have talked to people that they're like, I'm afraid to call my accountant because I feel like I'm interrupting them, or they've talked down to me. It's like, no, like like use them as strategic advisors, and if you are not gelling with them, then it's totally okay to go get you someone that's supportive, right? And coming from just to give you a little bit of background, like I literally, like my
Yes.
dad was like, come help me into my company. And I'm like, oh, sure, I'll just do a couple of things, and then like walking into like a complete, like it was 2009, the construction, I mean, in the Western culture, the whole recession was happening. Like I walked into like a firestorm. What did you call it? Baptism by fire. That is
Yeah.
exactly what I walked into. And we had, at the time, we had a bookkeeper, a long-term bookkeeper. And I think she got upset and she quit within 2 weeks of me coming on. So I learned payroll by doing payroll.
Oh, wow.
All of that, right? So I say
Yeah.
all of that to you, to those of you that are listening, of like, I didn't even know the questions to ask, right? Because I was coming in from a place of like I didn't even know the software. I didn't even know how payroll worked or what system you know what I mean? Like there was just so many things that I didn't even know. I mean, I knew about like social security taxes and stuff, but like I didn't know how 941s worked. I didn't know that, all of these things. And so I say that to say, for those of you that are like, I don't want to ask. The only way we learn is by doing, is sometimes in air quotes, by messing up, right? Like we learn through the action of doing. And so I really want to encourage each of you to use your bookkeeper if you have one. And if you don't, then, maybe that's something that for 2024 you put on the list of like, I want to find someone that like, supports me. Um, and also a CPA that like I look at it as like, you're the quarterback, right? The business owner's the quarterback, and you have all of these people that surround you to support you and help you manage, grow your business. And so we don't know the questions to ask. And so it's okay to, to say like, hey, I've stopped CPAs like in the middle of a sentence, like stop, layman's terms. What are you even talking about? Because I think it's the language, right? And
Yeah.
we can get a little, what's the word I want to use? Afraid isn't, but just like sometimes we don't want to appear not smart. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's intimidating
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like I love all that because to be honest, that's mostly my experience too working with people. And they're really smart, they're really capable. But then I ask them some basic questions about finances and they do look at me like a deer in headlights. And I do think having a bookkeeper can be nice sometimes because we could kind of play like a middleman and
Mm-hmm.
speak both languages,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wish more like yeah, I wish more people would um feel more would like I wish the industry would help small business owners feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, and I I also wish they would do more research in hiring an accountant. You know,
Mm.
I actually Googled online how to find a good accountant, and there's a lot of resources out there.
There are.
Like
Yeah.
ideas for questions to ask, like what to
Mm-hmm.
look for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a great idea if you're looking for an accountant to just Google it and then ask some of those things. Because I think sometimes we just kind of we get a referral and then we kind of fall into that, but we don't really know the world and what to expect from an accountant.
Yes. Can I say something here too?
Yeah. Yes, please.
So, as sacral beings, also, like, in the financial world, in the whatever world, right? We're taught to make decisions with our minds. And as sacral beings, I can't stress enough that when you sit down with a CPA, if they are not like a gut yes, a body yes, like this feels good to be with this person, then it's okay. Even if, they're saying all the right things and everything of that sort, it's okay to walk away and find someone that supports you because it's going to like determine the rest of your relationship, right? When you are making a decision like, oh, they look really good on paper, right? Versus this just doesn't feel like a gut yes for me, supportive for me and, my business.
I love that so much. I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about HD
Oh
here,
yeah,
so
totally.
okay.
Yes, all the things
Okay.
for all my sacral beings
Okay, great.
because there's been so many times, and I can't tell you how many times that I have made decisions, right? This
Yep.
is the deconditioning process we have to do. And I think it's
Yep.
really strong for a lot of us with money and business and finance,
Mhm.
right? And so on paper, right, resumes or numbers or whatever, it makes sense. And that is not how we make decisions. And that is, I mean, that's just not how we do it. And so really
Yeah.
tapping into and trusting yourself because and you might get, pushback if you have a team or you like I mean, I remember when I was with my dad and he would always want to be like, well, what is your reasoning? I'm like, it just like, I just don't like this person, right? Just doesn't feel good. And I think when we've been conditioned to give reasoning, right, for our whys we're making a decision, it takes us out of our bodies back into our heads. And that's not where we make that decision from. And so really trusting, like you can interview, 3 to 5 to however many, like have a phone conversation, go and sit down, like see, and one of the things I do want to say is with whoever you work with, if like I think Oprah would always say this, it's like when people show you who they are, like trust them. So if they are already like, I'm so busy, I don't have a lot of time, like that is what is going to probably be like for you when it comes time to take, to take a phone call, look at your taxes or whatever. So just be mindful of like the interaction that you're having, kind of like a date, right? Like
Yeah.
go on that first date together, see how it is, and then see if you want to continue to engage in a relationship with them.
Yes, I love that so much, especially because I just wanna stress how important an accountant is. If you really wanna have a real business and grow, you need a really good accountant to support you, and I think a lot of people, they just kinda hire whoever. But yeah, I think it's a really big decision. Like, I know with my personal accountant, I knew what I was looking for. I wanted someone who would give me tax advice, who wasn't just gonna file my taxes and I'd never hear from him for the rest of the year. So I asked
Yep.
my questions, but I definitely I was like lit up by a light bulb, like a
Mm,
light bulb by the end of the conversation. I just loved him so much. And that's how I made my decision. And
mhm.
I had just started HD design. And I think now, like at the time, I didn't even know
Yeah,
that's how I was making the decision. But now that I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, like even just talking about him now, I light up. I loved him.
yeah.
So yeah. So a few things though I think that you should look for is make sure they're actually, if you want help with taxes, a tax accountant,
Mhm.
because not all accountants are good with taxes. And if you have a really complicated business structure, maybe look for an enrolled agent because they have a really hard test to take, that's all about taxes to get certified. And I like from my experience, they are amazing. And then I just want to say too, you can pay $200 to just have your taxes filed every year. But if you want someone that's going to help you with strategy, then I would look more to the mid to high price range because you're really going to get better support there. And I know that can feel a little like, oh, I don't want to spend that money like on an accountant. but um,
I
but it
think
is really important.
it's extremely important. Like I've always, like I said, I mean, you're they're not just doing a task for you, right? Like when I was a financial planner, it's like you had an estate attorney and you had a really good tax. It's like you have this team, think of it like a team that supports you. And, you know, having someone who's going to do tax strategy, not in November and December, right? Like
Yep.
we're talking about like all year round and a couple times a year is fine, but just touching base. And as you're growing, like, okay, estimating cash flow and estimating, like revenue and more, what's your revenue going to be, for the next X amount of months so that you can actually plan. So it's not like this, yeah, fly by the seat of your pants, right? It's like, oh, you're
And
coming
then
to
just
you
file taxes
and then just file
accordingly.
taxes, right?
Yeah.
Because I think also too, as a business owner, we have a responsibility. You don't have to necessarily learn all of the ins and outs of the tax law and all of that kind of stuff. And also, it's our responsibility to understand what's happening in our business. And I think a lot of times we just assume like, oh, the bookkeeper knows what they're doing. Oh, the tax, the accountant knows what they're doing. And yes, they do. And also, the buck stops with you as the business owner.
Yeah, I also have a whole page of notes about
Okay.
this
I'm
too.
like,
I love
okay,
this
I'll just be
topic.
quiet.
No, I mean, I don't know, and I also don't wanna I don't want to make anyone feel bad, right? Because, this is just something that, isn't really talked about, and from my experience, I see people who, like I said before, are really smart, really capable, and they're working in the business so much that they just don't have a lot of time to work on the business, and, I would really like love to really just kind of encourage people to change the narrative there because like yeah, I don't know if I should say this. I think
You have
we've
to do
talked.
both, right? Like, you have to
Yeah.
do, like, and Stephanie and I are always coming from a place of love and empowerment, right? Like, this isn't a if you notice that you are doing this, it's not a problem, right? It's okay.
No.
Where am I giving my power away? Where am I just assuming that they're doing XYZ, right? Versus, no, I love my business. I want to know what's going on with my business, and that's okay. And so, um yeah, it's totally a and here we go back to, like, it's shining the light. Like, I that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have Stephanie on, was because it's like you get to see the other side of the laptop, right?
Yeah.
Like, we go in as business owners and we're like, okay, here's our stuff, and then she does her magic and then she gives it back to us, versus, like, no, let me peel the curtain back and let me show you what I see so that you can learn and, like, quantum leap, or time lapse, whatever, so that you're not having to go through some of these experiences in order to gain the knowledge and the wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. And and if you do have a bookkeeper, then you don't have to do as much bookkeeping. You have more time to look at reports, and really be like the CFO, the CEO of your company.
Yeah.
Um, and I really wish this was the thing that I was like, I'm not sure if
Oh,
I should say this, but honestly, I was really surprised at uh how trusting people were. Like they would give me
yes.
their bank information, the social security numbers, everything, and I don't take that information. And I also was like, oh, I can see how accountants would like siphon money from companies because the business owner isn't like sometimes isn't as evolved as like I wish that they would be. Um, just making sure. And I also think, maybe it's because they don't really know what to look for, right?
Yeah. It's like
Um,
you don't know the questions to ask, or you
yeah,
don't know
like
what
you
to
were
look
saying.
for. And from the if let's just do it this way. If you're wearing the business owner hat and you're trying to serve your clients and you're trying to generate income, you have a limited bandwidth. Like, let's
Yep.
just be honest here, right? And so you're going to pick and choose what is like, how do you keep moving the cart forward, right? And also, how do we also do that with the finances? Because that's just as, I think sometimes we want to look at and be like, okay, well, serving my clients and being a business owner is important 100%, and also not to negate those things that are just as important that sometimes get put by the wayside.
Yeah, to make a little bit more space. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
education and finance, or yeah. Um, which leads me back to like I like looked up all these books when I was
Yeah.
researching for this podcast.
Yeah.
And there's so many boring books out there. Like, and I even looked up like books for the layman with accounting and the terms and the. I mean, it's just. I did find a couple books, so maybe I'll give you their names later that I think might be
Yeah, we
helpful.
can put
But
them in the show notes. And I think, I don't know if this is what, but it's like, it's almost like the financial industry has made it super difficult. So you actually have to go, I
yes,
mean, don't get me wrong. I 100% a bookkeeper and a CPA. And also, like, where's the information that we can learn on our own to then come empowered with more questions and knowledge, so we can then dive into it deeper, right? Because I feel like, and you can speak to this better, but like when I was doing my dad's family construction business, it was very much like, at the beginning it was just like basic knowledge, right? But then as I
yeah,
started to really dive deep, right, like my knowledge and my questions got very specific because my knowledge was so deep, right? And so when you're learning about this stuff, if you can kind of skip some of this because you already have some of this information, then you can utilize your CPA and your bookkeeper a lot more efficiently.
yeah, I love that. And and I do think this is kind of what I was talking about before is I think the industry has failed a lot of like entrepreneurs. Um, I even had a coach tell me once that like I didn't need to file taxes. And
For those of you that can't see my face, I'm like
Yeah.
big
She was
whoop,
like
eyes.
she's like, "Don't worry about setting anything up like that. Like, you don't really need to file. You probably won't make enough." And like, but like as of 2023, if you make more than $400 in self-employment, you have to pay taxes, both federal and social security tax. So and but that's what I see a lot. You know, a lot of times like and again, this isn't to like judge anyone because I just think as entrepreneurs, like small business owners, there's just so much on your plate, right? Like
Mhm.
it's just really hard to do everything. But a lot of times, like I see people who are really competent, but they're just really busy and they have no idea what their spending is, what their profit is. Sometimes they haven't even filed taxes for a couple of years. Sometimes they don't they like haven't even they've been in business for 3 years and haven't done anything structurally. And
When you say
that's
that, for those of you that may not understand what that means, when you say structurally, you mean like setting up an LLC, or you mean like just getting QuickBooks together, or you mean all of it, or what do you mean when you say that?
well, all of it. You
Okay.
know, I've met people that they didn't have like a business license. They yeah, I've just seen a lot of things. And so and I kind of wanted to talk about all the things I've seen too to like make sure that people if you're sitting here like just thinking inside like, "Oh my gosh, that's me." Like that you're probably like the norm.
Yes.
Like the exception like you're the normal. Like the exception is having all your ducks in a row in
Yep.
finances. That's from what I've seen. Maybe 20%, like as low as 20%. And
Yep.
so and that's why I wanted to talk about this more because some people and they're like, "Oh, I have to like they didn't know. Oh, I have to have a business license. Oh, I have to file taxes." You know, and they didn't know. So, but yeah, I guess structurally that could be having a business bank account, having a business license, making sure you're not paying sales tax with the state. I have like a long list
List.
list of
Yeah.
ideas if you're a new business owner of things to look at, but it's just kind of the boring stuff that people don't want to do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I think, this comes into, I mean, I've read so many money books because money has probably been my, when I say vice, what I mean is like it's been my probably core wound or thing that I've really had to,
To work through.
yeah, work through. And um one of the ones that I'm recently reading, and I've read this in other books, but they were talking about currency instead of changing the word, using instead of money, just change it as currency. Or like I've read in other books, like instead of using the word money, like if you were to use trees, like we put the word money to it and then we completely change how we feel because we have so many emotions and story or backstory with money, right? And
Yes.
so that our emotions 100% drives our behavior. And so, there's the logistical, like, okay, what are the questions I need to know? How do I need to structure my business? Like understanding that side of the business. And then there's like, what are your emotions around money? And how is that either keeping you, stopping you, you know, having you do XYZ, like really getting clear and understanding like what is my relationship to money, because that has us hiding and not looking at our books, or that has us overspending and not paying attention, or and neither, none of these behaviors are good or bad, they just are. And like really becoming aware of like what is your relationship to money.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think that that's, in my perspective, like the other half of the problem, right? The first half is that the industry and our business coaches aren't talking about it, I don't think, as much as they should.
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of education available for the layman. And then the second part is that it's so triggering for most of us. Like, to be honest, one of my major mindset blocks has been money also. And so then when you have to do those things that you have no foundation in, then it just makes it even harder
Mhm. Mhm.
to conquer the mindset.
Yeah.
which is like a whole other monster, right? A rabbit hole to go down when you
It
talk about
it
money mindset.
it really is because I think, because that really allows us to get vulnerable. Like you said, like maybe not a lot of, I don't know how many coaches, whatever, guides, mentors actually have a really good relationship with money, right? Like
Yes.
I think it's talked about, but like really like embodied, like how many of them that are helping us along this journey are like legit, money's my best friend. I love this thing. Come on with
Yeah.
me, like,
Yeah.
and that's not just, that's not a, like, nothing that Stephanie or I are saying, like, it's no judgment. It's just like, that's what I have seen. And I think that it's, here we go back to like, what is our responsibility, right? As owners, as just humans, right? Like, what are the things that are stopping us from having the business that we want or for doing the things that we want to do and looking at that? And that takes a lot of vulnerability, which, I mean, is scary, right? Like it's really
Yeah.
scary to face. I mean, I've always had like a fear-based relationship with money. And so it, to the outsider looking in, it could be like, but you have enough, but it's like, but my body doesn't feel like that, right? And
Yeah.
so when I just want to say to each of you, like, be really compassionate with yourself because this is not something that's taught in school. This is not something that a lot of our parents probably openly discussed with us. Like, I
Yeah.
came from a household of like, don't have enough, can't afford it. Like I saw the highs, the lows, the highs again, and so just really being compassionate and soft and slow with yourself as you go through this process because there are those two parts, right? There is the knowledge part and then there's all of that emotional stuff that's underneath as well.
Yeah. I love that so much. And I think that's, I don't know about, accountants, but I know from my experience as a bookkeeper, I think that's one way I really help people is because I'm not attached in any
Mm,
way emotionally to their finances, and I provide like a safe environment for us to just talk about things openly and workshop and um um I don't know. It's such a hard thing. It's really nice to have like a partner in that,
yeah.
you know.
And I also think that, I mean, I don't know if I've ever had an emotional conversation with money with a CPA. You know what I mean? Like I just
Yeah,
don't
I'm not
think that
sure.
we're at that. Maybe we're not there yet. It's something I for sure like want, that's what I want us to be able to do because I think that that is such a driver, right? But it's very much so like, here are the numbers. But why we don't do something or why we do something is because of an emotion. And so, really kind of, you know, yeah, getting clear on what are you feeling underneath on a consistent basis around your money, I think would be super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that 100%. And
Um, sorry, what were you going to
my
say?
well, I know what part of my own journey, I used to look at all these other people with successful businesses and judge myself.
Me
But a
too.
lot of people use numbers in their marketing,
Mm.
and now that I've seen like the other side, I
Mm.
kind of want to speak to like people who might be doing that same thing that like things aren't always like
I'm like, I'll
they
grab my
might
popcorn. Go.
yeah, like they might say like and it may be true. They might say, "Hey, I made this much money this year," but like sometimes they're just talking about the gross and
Yes.
they're spending that much on ads, as much as they make on ads. And so like you just don't really know what's happening behind the scenes. And the more that I've learned on the other side, the less I compare myself to some of these people out there that are using that. So I don't know, I just thought that may be helpful for
That's
people that like
very
don't
helpful.
see my side, that don't really see like the underbelly, right?
That's very helpful because I think, I mean, I used to look at I mean, because money is a thing for me, right? And so I would look at other people, I'd be
Too.
like, there's something wrong with me, right? Like that's probably the undertone of like what I would feel.
Yep.
And like you're saying, like gross revenue, right? Like dollars sold is very different than net profit, what you actually have left over at the end of the year in your bank account. And so I think it's changing, right? I think
I do, yeah.
we're moving away from that, like, I don't want
That
to say
perfect image of
ego mentality. Yeah, right. Like,
yeah.
let me show you what we're doing. And also, if you don't have a strong foundation in money, it can be one of the things that holds you back, right? Like, so if you're wanting to either leave your job and start your business, or you've been at it for a while, that's another thing too. It's like we always highlight the the air quotes for those of you listening, the made it's, right? But we
Yes,
don't
the
talk about,
success stories
yeah, the success.
from nothing to like 1,000,000 in 2 years or something, right?
Yeah. But we don't talk about like what that gap, right? Of where we had to go and what we had to work through, and, you know, all of the stuff that came up during that time. And I think the more that we can all share our stories about that, I think it, allows others to be like, hey, it's possible for me too, right? Because when we highlight that air quotes perfection, then we look back at ourselves and we compare ourselves and think like, I can't do that because they went from there to there. Like they're just showing the beginning and the end, right? Not all of the in between. And that's like where the juicy goodness is.
Yeah. And also most of us don't have those extreme success stories. Like most of us I know, well, from my
Yeah.
perspective
Yeah.
and my own experience, I've just slowly grown like $10 more here, like, you know, like line upon line slowly and to be honest that feels much better in my body as a manifesting generator to just kind of um yeah, like try out this and try out that and I kind of bounce around but like I just I believe that that's I don't know. I know in the past I judged myself because I've also struggled with money and I was really hoping I would have one of those amazing success stories, right? I don't know, maybe we all hope for that or maybe I was just being idealistic.
And I think
But
we all do in our own way, right? Like I think
yeah.
that two things that you said. One, slowly have grown. Like I have said this so many times lately, like let's normalize slowly growing. Because if you really think about like if you were to have air quotes overnight success, number one, your nervous system probably is not prepped and ready for that.
Mm-mm.
You do not have the systems in place to.
Oh, yep. Like, I have so much I can say about this also. Like, I've seen people that have that, I mean, and then they just crap, you know, they just are not ready for it.
Yeah.
Sorry I interrupted you,
No,
but
it's
I just
totally
like
like share, you're gonna have to share this because
like, yeah,
this is what we think, right? This is that fantasy. This is that dopamine hit that we're like, yes, we want this, but do you have systems in place? Do you have the people already hired? Have you calibrated to having that amount of money, right? Have you calibrated to having that amount of expenses? Like one of the things that really started to, this was when I took time off, that I was like, I'm going to actually have to have more credit cards bills, like higher credit card bill statements, right? Like I had always been like, oh, as minimal as I can. I'm like, no, 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 no. If I want to have more money, I'm also probably going to have some more expenses of things that I enjoy doing, right? And like calibrating your nervous system for also the outgoing as well as the incoming, right? And so
yeah,
that is not something that is talked about. And so we look and we're like, oh, we want this, but it's like, but do you really, right? Like
yeah,
what is more compassionate to your nervous system? Is that incremental? It's not sexy, right? Because everybody, I
yeah.
think it's sexy. The world doesn't
Yeah,
think that
we think
it's,
it's sexy.
the
Me and
world doesn't,
Aaron.
the world doesn't think it's sexy because, you want to like show all of the, the highlights, right?
Yep,
But if you ask the people that have gotten to that place and that have been able to keep it,
yep,
they
to hold
got
it.
there incrementally, right? Like because
Yep,
you have to be able to calibrate your nervous system to be able to hold, I mean, like the capacity to have that amount of money come in and to have it. And I don't know if you want to talk about scarcity, but like scarcity shows up in both ways, right? Like for me, scarcity has always showed up with like hoarding the money, right? But scarcity
yes.
can also show up in like, okay, 50,000 came in and now I'm gonna hire people and do all the things for 50,000 coming out, right? Like so
Yep.
there's those both sides of scarcity of what that looks like. And so
Yeah.
being aware of it.
Yeah, I love everything you said, and I totally agree. I always love everything you say. But, yeah, I've been surprised. I think the norm I'm a hoarder also, and so I'm amazing at budgeting. Um, but I think the norm is actually to spend as much as you're bringing in. And what can happen is you make $500,000 and then you spent it all. And then you have to pay taxes on $500,000 and you're like, "Well, I didn't make that." And a lot of people are like, "There's no way I made that much money," because you're just not aware of it. And so I think that's the biggest danger with growing too fast is that you start spending as much as you're bringing in. And I think to get comfortable, like, I think for me, I've focused more on getting comfortable with, um, well, and I can be really intense with budgeting, but yeah, I've tried to focus more on the money mindset around the profit that I'm bringing in, as
Mm,
opposed to, like, I don't know, I guess I haven't really thought about this much, so I might want to think about it and then come back later with
yeah.
better words. But um, I just think focusing on profit is really important and really embracing not just how much the business is bringing in, but the profit that you're getting from it. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, totally. Because you can have you can have, like you said, 500,000 and you can show zero or negative profit, right? Like
Yeah, and I would say that's really common
I was gonna say, and there's lots of people, right, that do that. And so
because as you grow, you get more ads and you have more employees, and it's just really easy to rack all that up.
something else that I want to say that I think is really and I don't think I got this lesson until I don't know when it was, but if you have money, sometimes we use money to throw at problems that we need to use our brains and not the money. And I think sometimes that can be um you know what I mean? Like you want to like hire, you want to do an ad, or you want to versus
Yeah.
like actually solving the problem versus using the money to try to solve the problem. I know I've done
Yes.
that.
Yeah, I've done that. Like, maybe you're not great at marketing, so then you just hire someone to do your ads, but they're not very good. And then you just spent $100,000 in ads and you got, like, yeah, like all those. And I think that's why growing slow is really helpful, because then personally, I love growing slow. I never thought I would say this actually, but I'm loving growing slow because I have that time to really think about what I want to do. And now I'm hiring and I'm really thinking about who I want to hire. And HT design is so helpful too, because um like, I've been using HT design, but like, just every level you go to, there are new problems. Like with hiring, I had 20 interviews and I've never interviewed anyone. Um and I just happened to get lucky, I feel like, with my virtual assistant. But the way my mind works, all of a sudden I saw all of these new things, like training the VA, and like how it could be really easy to hire, just kind of go through money because you're hiring and then they don't do the work that you like.
Yep.
And then you kind of like, it's an invest, like you're kind of in, I don't want to say that you're losing money in the hiring process, but there can be some leaks there, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Because you haven't grown yourself, right? Like we
yeah,
have to grow the business owner to the level. I mean, you hear people talk about like they win the lottery, right? And then they don't have the money after. It's because they haven't grown to the capacity of the person that has the X amount of money, right? It's the same
yeah,
thing with business. It's like we have to grow into that. And I've heard this before, and then I've been reading this book called Regenerative Business by Sam Garcia. And she said, and she brings in nature, which I love. And she talks about like the only thing that grows nonstop is cancer. And it's like, yes, right? Like this idea of like just growth, 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 growth. Like if you were trying to go run like that nonstop, like when are you going to take a break? When are you going to refill your body? When are you going to, drink some water?
yeah.
So it's the same thing with business. And somehow we've disassociated that and we're just like, we need to get to X amount. I think also too, we have been led to believe that that number is going to bring us a feeling,
Yeah,
which,
absolutely.
you know,
Which is hard to when you're not making money, like, because 'cause I've been there, right? It's really hard. Like, I used to think that's such a dumb thing to say. Like, of course I'll feel better once I have that much more money. I just still, like, didn't understand.
yeah. Well, for a
But,
hot
like,
second, we do, right? Like for a hot second, you do feel a little
yeah,
bit better, right? But it's not sustaining because it's a
yeah,
fulfillment within. Go ahead,
yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I have been surprised that, and then that's another reason why I've been glad growing incrementally, to be honest, um because I think I'm really have the time to think about my money values, like to think about my budgeting, to think about how I really want to do things and not fall into that trap of just like now I have more money, I'm just going to spend it all with all of my hopes and dreams that I had before,
Hmm.
that now I can finally do. Like I'm still budgeting, I'm still like doing all of those practices that I did before.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, because from the energetic place, right? Like we want money to know, like, hey, we can handle you, right? Like we can have you, we can use you as because it's a tool, right? As a way
yeah.
to help us. And so, um, back to your values, because I think this is really important, is like, what do we value in our business? Like focusing on where we are good at, like where's our zone of genius, and not beating ourselves up for getting help or for, um, you know, having advisors that help us because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, this is a total assumption, so I don't know, but like a lot of entrepreneurs are probably like high achievers, right? Like go getters, right? And so we have grown up probably with the mindset of like you do it on your own, you don't ask for help, any type of weakness, air quotes, right? Like, if you're asking for help, then that makes you weak. And so I just want to, if you want to share how important that is like it's okay to ask for help, to not know, to be like I always say, like beginner's mind, right? Like we don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure as the CEO, you want to appear confident. But, like, most of the people that I've met and interviewed, even ones that I don't work with, they're all really smart. Like you said, like, most entrepreneurs, I think, are really capable, really smart, and maybe that is the trap, is that they're like, "Well, I can just learn this on my own,"
Mm.
but then they never have the time, right? And, like, to be honest, like, I think I'm a little bit of a rarity. Like, how many people really like doing book work?
Yeah, no,
Like,
I agree.
not that many people.
Yeah.
So, and especially, like, if you're into HD design, and you're a projector, like, or, someone that doesn't really like the doing,
Yeah.
that's where, bookkeeping, hiring a bookkeeper can be very supportive and just take something off your plate. And they're pretty affordable, because you're not actually hiring a full-time employee, especially
Yes.
if you hire after like a monthly bookkeeper
Hmm.
that just comes in once a month. My prices start at $200 a month.
Hmm.
So if you're making, 20,000 a year, you should be able
Yeah.
to afford just a little bit of help. And that's like my lowest package, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's like we're almost too smart that we want to do everything on our own. But QuickBooks can be it can
Hey,
be
I will be the
a
first to admit,
monster.
the
Okay,
only reason I will be the first to admit, the only reason why I will not do anything other than QuickBooks is because I don't want to spend the time learning. Like exactly what
Yep.
Stephanie's talking about. Like if I didn't already know QuickBooks, I would have already hired somebody because I don't like FreshBooks, I think is another one that's like online and stuff.
Mhm.
And I wanted to pull my hair out because like my brain was already like, this is how it works, right? And so I completely agree with like what Stephanie's saying. It's like I don't want to use my brain power to learn something new right now, And so I can totally understand and feel for why we like why we get into those situations, right? Because I mean, I have a Dell computer. Like my daughter was asking me the other day, she was like, "Mom, well, why don't you ever use your MacBook?" I'm like, "Because I don't want to go through the technical of like figuring out how QuickBooks and you know what I mean? And so I totally see how we can get, it's like choosing like where do I want to spend my time, you know? And so
And your energy,
yes.
and your because decision fatigue for entrepreneurs, I think, is a real thing.
Yes.
And you just have to really protect your mental power. And especially right now with everything going on in the world, it's just, yeah, everything is so dysregulated already. Like, we just really need to protect our energy, I think. And yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I have a Mac, and there's no way I would ever use an HD computer. Like, I can't like afford the resources. And then even with like getting dressed in the morning, like I just have like literally 10 white t-shirts. And I know that I know if
I'm the same
like we've
way.
all read entrepreneur books, right? They talk about that kind of thing. But like, yeah, it really is true. And accounting is something that can really make you just feel like your insides are like nails on a chalkboard.
Yes.
So like, yeah, I just think, say just if you can like afford it, like just save yourself a little bit of grief. Um, and just get some help there. It's if you want to grow, like I really believe if you want to grow and you really want to have a successful business that's actually a business and not just a hobby, you need to have a bookkeeper and uh um an accountant. And nowadays, like in the olden days, you just hired a person, right, to work in your office. They were like a business
Mm,
manager and they did the books on the side.
yep.
But especially if we're talking to coaches, you'll have a virtual assistant, but now we have virtual bookkeepers that are cheaper than that can be cheaper than a virtual assistant. So I think it is accessible if you budget for it.
That,
But
and I want to say, because we can use those words against us, like, I can't afford it. It's like sometimes, and I'm not advocating you put yourself in financial harm's way. And
yeah,
also sometimes we have to hire before we think we are ready because then that allows us to free up time and to go do the thing that, that we're geniuses in. And so,
yeah, and that we
um,
love to do because we're
yes,
talking
and that
about
we love
sacral
to do.
beings, right?
Yep.
So yeah.
And that we love to do.
Oh, yeah, no, you think about it and I'll say what I was gonna
Okay.
say. So that is one thing that I wish people would hire a bookkeeper sooner. I usually come in and everything is super chaotic, right? Like they paid double in their taxes because the income wasn't recorded correctly, or they haven't filed taxes, or literally the software does not make any sense at all. Like you can't tell what's going on. But if you start from the beginning, then you'll save yourself if you start doing it right from the beginning or as like soon as you can, you're going to save yourself a ton of money and a ton of stress. Like the main feeling that I get when I come in is like a sense of relief because people are so overwhelmed and they're just so busy as an entrepreneur. Um, so I really wish that like people would, and I'm just promote like I'm not trying to sell myself right now. Like I don't need any more clients.
Oh, I'm like, I'm selling all of I'm
Okay.
selling all of
But I
Stephanie and all the
but I
bookkeepers and
just
all the CPAs because you're such a
but
valuable integration,
yeah, like I just don't want to think people that I'm like
Oh,
tooting my own horn, like I'm trying to get business out of this. Like I'm really just trying to help people. Like I want to help you
yes.
and your business. And like you need some help, like just please get some help.
This is what I wrote down. It's okay for things to be easy because I think that here we go back to like being brought up, right? Being brought up with like struggle and hard and like
Doing it yourself and just
doing it yourself and like you should know this and yes, we are saying like we do want to know, we do want to be aware, and also it's okay to outsource things you don't enjoy doing and then to have that, data be brought to you. Like that is totally okay to do. And I think that we, have been taught like, well, we have to figure it out ourselves and we have to do it all. And it's like, no, like as a sacral being, what are the things that really light you up? And what are the things that you want to poke dull pencils in your eyes with? And those things that you are like, I want to poke my eyes out, like get help, right? And also, you don't have to go from 0 to 100, right? So maybe it's not a full-time bookkeeper. Maybe it's just like, okay, tell me, bookkeeper, what are the things that I absolutely need to have done? And then I can either learn, or, we can put that on to the next quarter or whatever it might be. Like, this is also something I think is really important as a business owner, is visualizing the people that you're going to pay as you grow, right? Like,
I love that.
it feels so good to me to be like, I'm gonna have my own CFO. Like, that's amazing, right? I'm gonna have my own bookkeeper. I'm gonna have, I don't know what, like, maybe own personal assistant. Like, just thinking about like having those relationships before you already do, and like, what is that relationship? How do you want that relationship to be? And so really just getting clear before it already comes time to, like, you know, you need one. What does that look like?
I love that so much. Yeah. I I have never thought about the visualizing thing, but I think that that's really great, and also kind of steps you more into the role of the CEO as opposed to just working in the business, right?
Yeah.
Which
And
we
I
all
think,
struggle with.
if you are someone who's currently working at a 9 to 5, and you're wanting to branch off and you're wanting to start your own business, you really have this identity shift of like, you know, as an employee, we're really good at doing all of the things, right? And also as sacral beings, we're really good at doing all of the things. And
Mhm.
then when you go into entrepreneurship, you wear those two, well, you wear all kinds of hats, but like, you wear the employee hat of like doing the thing you love to do, providing the service to your clients. And then you also have to put on the CEO hat, and like setting aside time for both. Probably you're going to be more so as an employee in your business in the beginning, and then setting aside those times that it's like a date with yourself, right? Like the CEO things. Do you want to talk about that, of like having CEO time to, um, just really like look at your money, or talk to your bookkeeper, or, CPA stuff, like those things that I think sometimes we will get to it at some point in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I struggle with this too. So I know that like the struggle is real, right? But
Yeah.
like I don't know how you grow without doing that.
Yeah.
And like ideally we all got into this business because we wanted to do something. I mean, I'm just assuming, but
Yeah.
because this is my experience, I wanted freedom. I wanted to be more in control of my money. I wanted to do something that I really loved. And I think that's pretty common.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, even from a tax perspective, I think it's hard because like transitioning from an employee to like this is just a good example, right? Like let's talk about taxes for a second.
Yeah.
So when you're an employee, you get your W-2 and taxes are actually pretty like straightforward.
Yep.
Like you just file your W-2, some of your assets, da 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 da. But when you're a business owner, like and then also like if you make I can't remember the exact numbers, it's somewhere around 12,000, like this isn't tax advice, but
Yeah.
just educate for education.
Yeah.
Like
We're
let's
just,
say you're yeah, we're just like assuming, like hypothesizing.
yeah.
Let's assume you make $12,000 a year and you're single, like you probably won't have to file taxes. But and I think this is where sometimes people get in trouble. If you make $400 a year as a self-employed, you have to file Social Security, you have to file all the taxes, federal, state, and y- and so the tax experience is totally different, and I don't think people really quite like
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
And then also like as a W-2 employee, like your employer is paying some of your taxes for you. Self-employed, they're not. And so it's like it's totally different experience that people don't really talk about. And I think that we could kind of relate that to all of the things, like a lot of different areas when it comes to switching over to a CEO and things that we don't even know that we have to think about. And then all of a sudden you're the CEO and not only are you trying to get clients, I think when you first start your business, you're doing something you love, you just really want to get clients. Then all of a sudden 20 other things pop up that you need to be aware of, that you need to think about. And I think it's just overwhelming. Like I
It can
wonder
be. Yeah.
if
Very.
someone just said, here's what you need to think about as a CEO, and this is your CEO day, and like let's plan it out. Like
Hmm.
But no one really talks about that,
Mm-mm.
like in
No,
a
because I wrote down like who is like I always ask myself like who is the girl that I mean for right now, who is the girl that, you know, has X amount of business or you know what I mean? Like you have to start thinking from that as if place already and asking yourself those questions from that space. Do you want to share and think about like specifics? Like, what do we need to consider when we first start out, like the first 0 to 2 years when you're starting your business? Like, what would be some of the things that you've seen that you're like, okay, absolutely, this, and this, some things to be aware of or consider.
Okay, so I jotted down a bunch of like a bunch of things. And this is just logistical stuff,
Yeah,
right? Like just stuff to do
yeah,
on a to-do list. Um, so okay. So I would definitely say make sure that you create your business entity with the state. So that would be like every state is different. So you have to look at the state that you're at. But like for example, all I need is a business license in my state. But I wasn't sure. So I
yeah.
called the state. I asked them where to go. I went online. I did some research. I found out I didn't have to pay sales tax. That's another big one. Sometimes people don't realize, even as an online business, you may have to pay sales tax. And I know people that are paying thousands of dollars in back taxes for sales tax. So just check on that at the beginning. And you could do that on your own. Honestly, that's really easy. If you don't want to do it, you can have an accountant do that for you, the state formation, but they may just give you a form to fill out and then they type it in. So
Mhm.
it's like you're still
You're
doing the
doing it
work,
yourself, anyways. Yeah.
right? So do those two things. Make sure you get a federal EIN. Don't use your social security number. Um, and this kind of leads into the next one. Keep your business and your personal separate. I mean, these things are all pretty simple, but it's just, I think we just don't
But
talk about them.
no one talks about that. No.
Yeah. So keep everything separate as soon as you can. I know a lot of times it's hard to get business bank accounts when you're first starting out because you don't have capital, especially as a coach. But it gets really, it just it can be really complicated, especially like sometimes people grow really fast as coaches. So just as soon as you can, just try to get a separate checking account, even if it's a personal one, and just try to keep everything separate. Another reason why that's important is if you have an LLC
Mhm.
that and you're not keeping your business and personal expenses separate, a judge, if you get sued, a judge can come in and dissolve your LLC and take a lien on your house or take your car. So um, if you want to protect your personal assets, which are I'm guessing for most people is land, house, car,
Yeah.
then that's another important reason to keep the personal and the business separate. And I just want to say here really fast, an LLC is a legal thing.
Yeah, it's not
So
a tax. It's not
yeah,
how
so
you're taxed.
oftentimes I come in and I'm like, "What kind of business are you?" And they're like, "I'm an LLC." And I'm like, "That's great. What kind of business are you?" So the LLC is mainly just I mean, it's kind of it
It's just like an umbrella. Like I
yeah.
describe it like, and tell me if I'm off, but like I've always understood it's just kind of like the umbrella for what tax entity do you want to be? Do you want to be a sole proprietor? Do you want to be an S corp? Do you want to be a C corp? But it's just
Yeah.
kind of like the little legal protection overhead.
Yeah. And when you get into corporations, it could kind of get a little mixed in, but at least for partnerships and sole proprietors, which most coaches start out as,
Yep.
you're not going to be an S corporation. And so you're probably going to want an LLC. But if you want it to work, then you got to make sure your finances are right.
Yeah. When you say
So
that, what you mean is that they're separate, that you're like
that they're
treating it like
separate.
a business. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's also really helpful once you grow, because if you start getting used to looking at your all of your business expenses and your net profit and just paying yourself as opposed to just like I just see a lot of people especially as a sole proprietorship, it's really easy just to use your business debit card and just pay for personal things and then just mark it
Mm.
as a personal expense. But eventually you're going to want to turn into an S corporation to save some money on taxes. So if you can get used to just like paying yourself, like I just pay myself at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month in one lump sum. And then I just pay for my personal expenses through my personal bank account.
That
And
comes
for
through
some
real.
reason, a lot of
uh
people don't like to do that. I don't know.
Um, I think it goes back to those emotions and the money, right? Versus, and like building these neural pathways. Like I think about like starting a business is like starting a new foundation, right? Like doing the things that you're going to thank yourself 5, 10 years down the road. Like you're already setting up the habits, right? Of like, you don't pull money out of your business account, like when
Yeah.
you want to go do whatever, right? Like it is a way you get paid, and like you agree to that. And, so just really setting up
Yeah.
really good habits, supportive, that are going to last you like the entire time of the business.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Like, yeah. And I can't tell you, this seems really simple, but I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this be like people just mixing the personal and business and then it becoming a problem. So, and especially if you're a corporation, you're not supposed to do that. Um,
Yeah, we're like, we know it's a problem when the CPA asks the questions, and we're like deer in the headlights, like,
yeah.
am I not supposed to be doing that? Yeah. So just like
Yeah.
starting, like you say, just starting from the get-go, separate stuff.
Yeah, just everything separate. Just think of your business separate from yourself. Because I get that a lot too. I'm like, just think of it separate as yourself. And they're like, well, it's my money, it's my business. And
But it's
that's
not like
true.
but it's
But
not though, right? Like it's
also
its
it's
own
not.
little entity. Yep.
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 And the government is really, as much as we don't like it, government is really involved in small businesses. So
Yeah.
and you could try to kind of sneak around in the background, but I would call that more of a hobby. Like if you really want to grow and make, good $500,000 a year, then we just have to do things legitimate. So
And it just like, I mean, from the energetic, like I'm coming at you from the
yeah.
energetic standpoint, right? Like whatever you believe in karma and dharma and all the things, right? Like there is, or the laws, it's like there's a misbalance, right? Like when you're trying to air quotes penny pinch, or you're trying to like do those types of things, there literally is an imbalance of energy. And it's just like, and also it's like on your mind, right? Like, so
Yeah.
just pay the tax, set it up the way, and then that's less that your mind is thinking about, because your subconscious mind is going to be thinking about that, right? Like,
Yeah. Because it sucks. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, okay.
And Social Security tax sucks,
But I mean, I would
but
even, like,
also,
I think, I think a lot of business owners have that mentality, like, oh, it sucks to pay Social Security tax, or oh, I don't like paying taxes. And also, I would encourage you to start thinking about, you know, why you would want to pay that, right? Like in
yeah.
order to pay Social Security tax, what does that mean? That means you're
Yeah.
making money, right? Like, what would that mean if I'm actually paying taxes, at the end of the year? I'm making money. And so just really shifting that mindset, because I think a lot of times we've been taught by the financial industry, right? Like that, oh, it's terrible to do that, or oh, we try to, minimize as much as we can. And yes, we do. And also, like, more taxes, more money, right? And so
Yeah.
shifting
No,
that.
yeah, I love that. And that is a funner way to look at things from like a feelings perspective.
Yeah.
And also like I think it's okay to feel like I don't want to shame anyone for feeling bad about paying taxes because I don't like them, but then I also do what you do because if I have to pay things, that means I'm making money and I'm
Yeah.
like being successful. And like ultimately that's what we want. And I know I do have experience with people that really focus in on how to save money on taxes and they're not even making a profit and they're like obsessed about that. And so um I just like want to yeah. Like in my mind
It's a
you
total
know,
mindset shift,
we
because
want
that
you
is
to be
what we've
making
been.
a profit. Like yeah, if you make a profit then you have to pay taxes. And like let's not hold ourselves back because we're so worried about the
That's
taxes.
exactly what we're doing, right? Like we're holding ourselves back. It's like, what is that saying? Like, cut off your nose to spite your face. Like that's literally what you're doing.
Yeah. And all the mental
Versus,
energy and all the yeah. Sorry, I cut you off, Erin.
No, that's exactly like, like let's think about how we can make more money to pay more taxes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that that feels like such an expansive thing versus
Yeah.
like this constricting of like, oh, I have to
Yeah.
save and I have to, how do I minimize it? And don't show that revenue this month or whatever. It's just like
Yeah. How do I hide this? Yeah.
that doesn't feel good.
No. Well, and on that note, that was the other thing I was gonna mention when you're first starting out a business. It can be hard to know how much you need to pay in estimated taxes. So I just want to say, anyone that has a partnership or sole proprietorship, you have to pay estimated taxes. So get an accountant, ask him about that because the what's it called? The formula for figuring out estimated
Yes.
taxes is a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
So get some help. But in the meantime, when you're first starting out, just take 10% of whatever net sales you made that month and put it into a savings account.
Okay. So I'm a really like actual, like, okay, give me dollar amounts. So you make 1,000, you need to put in 100 for your estimated taxes. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. 10% is kind of a low percentage, but it's a really easy percentage to take,
Mm-hmm.
10%.
Mm-hmm.
And then at least you have some put away.
Yeah.
And if you make low, like if you make, if you're not making like a ton, then you should be good. But you still want an accountant to like help you with that. But in the meantime, like,
The
because
habit of setting it aside, like,
yeah, the
you're going
habit
to
of
pay it
setting it
quarterly.
aside. Yeah, the habit of paying something quarterly. And then at least you're doing something. So the end of the year you don't owe, like 50,000 in taxes that you never paid. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and then the other thing I was gonna say is 1099s. I see this a lot. I don't know. Do you want me to talk about this?
I think it's like maybe at the surface level, like I think it's really important because a lot of people don't know this.
Yes. Well, that's why I want to bring it up because I see this all the time. So technically, if you're a business owner and you hire anyone that's not an employee and you pay them more than $600 that year, you have to send them a 1099. So that's just the rule as of 2023, like right now. The
Mhm.
IRS is really cracking down on this because people have been using Venmo and PayPal to get money for their businesses and not recording stuff. But the fines are pretty big if you don't file like a 1099, and it's on your shoulders as an employer to make sure that it's covered. So that being said, here's like a little caveat. If you're using a legitimate processor like PayPal, and I think Stripe does this
Right.
now,
Mhm.
to pay a contractor, like let's say we're talking to, I'm guessing a lot of coaches, so like your virtual assistant,
Mhm.
you paid them more than $600 that year, Stripe will send out a 1099K for you.
Mhm.
So you don't have to. But there are a lot of exceptions and little um I have some people that they don't pay with a credit card, they just pay auto withdrawal through their bank, and they don't get a 1099 for that, so I have to send that out to myself. Well, I do it for my clients to
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so just be careful there because there are some exceptions.
And what I would
But
always say is like, if you're ever in doubt, just send it out, right? Like
yeah,
nobody's ever going to get in trouble or whatever. At least you've done it. You have it. Should you ever get
yeah,
audited or anything like that, it's done for you,
yeah,
or
and then you don't have
you've
to
got it done.
pay 10%.
Yeah.
I
The
think the
penalties, the
IRS, they have a
taxes and the
lot of flexibility there. Like they can make you pay
make
10% of
it.
everything you paid. They can like choose. So
They're like, today it's going to be 15%. So yeah, I mean, you just have it, it's done. Here we go. And then here we go back to the energetics, right? Like you're not having to think about that as you're moving forward in your business, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you don't have to think about it. And I see this a lot. Um especially with coaches because we hire a lot of like social media contractors, virtual assistants, people that are overseas that are helping with graphics. Da, 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 da. There's like so many, and like most people I talk to don't know about this.
yep.
So yeah, and then of course, going back to your list to new business owners, like I would work on definitely get by your second year if you're making a profit, getting a bookkeeper and accountant.
Mhm. So until they can or choose to or whatever, what are like some absolute like Stephanie's seen on her side of the laptop where she's like, okay, if you're not hiring anybody for a bookkeeper yet, absolutely, this is what I recommend. Like, do these things. Like, at least set this up, or
Okay, that would be okay. Let me think for a second. So I would at least get an accountant so that
okay.
you have someone to bounce your questions off of. Um, and then I know people that even just keep Excel
I was
spreadsheets.
just about to say, just an Excel spreadsheet, something that just can keep things
Yeah, and just create your
itemized.
yeah, just create your categories. Um, and that's why having an accountant might be nice because
Mhm.
you can Google like business expense categories for coaches and they can give you a list. Sometimes it's good. I've seen a lot of bad ones. But if you have an accountant, you can ask them, "Hey, what categories should I make?" I just a lot of people get thrown off on the categories for some reason. And then yeah, even if you just have an Excel spreadsheet and I definitely get a business bank account. So don't just have a personal account and then list your business expenses on the Excel spreadsheet. Have an actual business bank account, and then make your categories and then at least record them in the Excel. The other thing that I would say is if you are assets and liabilities are recorded differently. So if you take out any loans, make sure you keep all of the paperwork for any cash down, like everything that happened, like record it all, even if you have to make a little note and make sure that you have the original paperwork and at least like put that in, even if you just have a shoebox is fine, a shoebox for that year, like make sure that that's in that year. And then also assets. If you buy anything, usually your accountant will give you a capitalization threshold.
Mhm.
Um, so it can vary wildly depending on the business, but I guess just to be safe, like let's say you purchase anything over $600, keep that receipt and make a note of like what you bought and like all the details around it to make sure you have like a item if you bought a bunch of things that you have like an itemized list and just like make sure you have that on hand because sometimes I come into the books and they don't have that information and I need to record it and we just don't know where it is. And it's a hard thing to explain to people how to record that stuff correctly.
Mhm.
Because then you get into journal entries and
Yeah.
it can get complicated. I mean,
Yeah.
um, but as long as you have that paperwork, you can give that to the accountant and they'll
And then
at
they
least
can
have
use it and decipher it.
the correct data. And you can get really good tax deductions off of interest from loans and asset depreciation. I know was a big one this year. So, things are always changing, but yeah, so I would at least do those two things. Definitely have a separate bank account. And then the thing I said is like the things that I said before are important. And the taking the 10% out to like have it like to pay your estimated taxes, I think is really important because most of us are making more than $400 a year. I
Mhm.
hope.
Mhm. Mhm.
if you ever if you ever decide to do payroll, please don't do that on your own. Just please don't.
And also from the end user standpoint, I never had payroll. I did interview a couple of payroll companies and really do some thorough research on your payroll. And I'm like, reach out to me or Stephanie and we'll give you. I
Yeah.
never want to like, always wanted like all the businesses, all the love, all the things, and also like, um, yeah. So if you're like wanting specific recommendations or you're, not sure questions to ask, be happy to help because that
Yeah.
is definitely one that, yeah, I feel really strongly about and like have talked to some that I'm like,
It's
absolutely not. And then some that they've got their stuff together.
yeah. And payroll is complicated and there's tons of laws per state and federal and they're always changing. It's just I've just seen people get into a lot of trouble with owing.
Yeah, it's just the lack of knowledge, right? It's like you don't
A lot
even
of
know. Like this is what I was telling my friend the other day when he always calls me and he's like, I need your advice." I'm like, "You don't need my advice. You just need me to tell you to trust your gut," you know? But he was telling me about his, this is off topic, but it was like his insurance audit, you know? And he didn't know the
Yeah.
questions to ask,
Yep.
right? And because he didn't know the questions to ask, and either because the insurance agent wasn't fully aware or didn't advise or educate, I'm not quite sure. But he had quite a different audit than he was expecting.
Yep.
And thankfully he had the money, right, to be able to pay for it. But if we don't know the questions to ask. This is like, part of business is like you learn by doing, right? Like you learn
Yeah.
by literally like y- I don't have any things. I mean, I used to have such thoughts around failure, but like we're just failing our way till we get it,
Yeah.
till something works, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Well, I'm a
so
3 line, so yeah, I relate to that a lot.
so
I'm a
we
3
just
6.
so we just we're just working our way till we get there. And also here we go back to like, and if you can make it easier on yourself, if you can have people in your corner that can help you, that can
Yeah.
circumvent some of these things, or you have some of these questions already answered or you're aware of them, it just makes it a little bit easier for you. So
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was hoping with this podcast, like, even just someone listening to this once,
yep.
now you're aware of a few things, like, you're way ahead of the game,
Yeah.
right? You have
Yeah.
better questions to ask.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I really want to. I mean, I have these visions. I don't know how it works out, and that's like really my trust with the universe and things. But it's like I really want to have a place where people are able to talk about this, because I don't think as business owners we talk about this kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and helping each other with some of this stuff, not necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't give tax advice because I'm not going to, but like questions to ask, right? Like somebody that's been in business longer than you have has that perspective, right, to look back on, to be like, hey, did you think about this, or did you check this out? And so
Yeah.
really just normalizing money, normalizing business, normalizing talking about these
Yeah.
things,
And
just like it's the
normalizing
weather.
asking your accountant.
Yes.
I wanted to say a little bit more about that.
Yes.
We haven't gotten to that because I do think it's the normal for and I just want to like preface this by saying I think accountants are an amazing resource
Yes.
like to the US, and I don't want to like diss accountants at all. But a lot of the times what I do see is the accountants are overworked. They're just filing taxes and they don't have time to answer any questions. And um and usually they're doing that because they're probably not charging enough, right?
Yep.
And they don't have time. So I don't think they're doing it to like because they don't care. I actually think a lot of accountants really care, but that's why paying like a mid-priced accountant, you're gonna get more advice and like just want to normalize people asking questions more.
Yes.
Like you said,
Yes.
like you can ask them, hey, what category should I make for my business?
Yeah. And I
Like
think,
what
go ahead. I'm
little
sorry.
things like just little things like that. Anything that you think is a dumb question, like I ask accountants all the time for my clients. That's one of the roles that I do because I think they get nervous. And so I'm like, well, let's just ask your accountant. And then I just send off a little thing. And luckily they have great accountants, but I think it's really important to find an accountant that can do that for you and pay for that kind of service, and also be aware that if you're in a place where your accountant's just filing for you and not giving you any support, that doesn't have to be like that, that you can change
Yes.
it and get more support.
We get to break up with all of the people that we want to. If,
Yeah.
like, that's why I say, like, going back to like our habits and our foundation, right? Like spending that time, like, to the new business owner, it may seem like, your brain might tell you, oh, this is a waste of time, or this is going to take a lot of time for me to find a good accountant. But here is this is my belief, my perception is once you find a really good one, you will stick with them for years, or maybe the lifetime of your business, or till they retire or pass on, or
Yep.
their business to, whoever's next, or buy out. And so like, it's like doing the legwork at the very beginning, because having to switch accountants when you have now gotten to a space where Now you're having to describe your business and you're having to, like, there's just so much more that gets added into it versus taking the time, asking the questions. And like, also too, I would ask, and here we go back to like making those sacral decisions, but like asking the accountant, like, are you going to be the one doing my taxes, or are you going to have, because sometimes this is not
Yeah.
public knowledge, right? They'll hire, which is perfectly fine. We all need to learn, but they will hire like new people, new graduates.
Yep.
Totally fine. And also, like, I was like, I don't want to be teaching your new CPA, right? Like, so really just being clear as to like who's going to be working on my taxes. Am I going to have to start the story every time I have a conversation, or is it going to be one person? It's just really asking those questions. And I always started it with like, I'm not questioning you. I'm asking because I don't know, right? And so a lot of the questions we have is because we literally don't know why they're doing it the way that they're doing. Like, it's all of us have this, right? We all
Yeah.
have our zone of genius. We all have the, like, we don't even think about it. We think everyone knows this. This is exactly what CPAs and bookkeepers, do as well, right? Like, you guys have such a gift, right, that you work with. And so to you, it's just second nature. You're not even thinking about it. And to those of us that are new to it, we don't know. And so it's okay, like you said, normalizing asking the questions. And I would
Yeah.
say that would be my first red flag. Like, if your CPA or your prospective CPA is getting upset that you're asking questions or huffing or whatever,
Or
it's
they don't get back to you for a month.
okay, good point too. Then it's
Then
it's time to move
they're
on.
yeah, they're not yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I know with my accountant, I asked him, I was like, "I want tax, like, strategy advice, like, I want someone that I can ask questions to that, like, you'll be there for me, like, year round, so, are you okay? Is that something you do?" That was kind of one of the first things that I asked him.
Yeah.
Um, and the counting sorry, my 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 MG head always gets ahead of my actual physical body. Um, the accounting world is really kind of a mysterious world, I think. Like, unless you're in it, it's like super confusing and like very mysterious. So, and that's just how I guess that industry has grown, and it's always changing, right? That's one reason why we need accountants. Kind of like the legal world. It's weird and mysterious and confusing in our ginormous government. Um,
Yeah, because they're always changing the tax laws. They're always doing it, and like,
yeah,
thank goodness for those of you CPAs that love to know about that stuff. Because
yeah.
I
Well,
don't
that's
want
not
to.
me. I don't
I
like
don't want
tax
to.
law. I just like the bookkeeping.
I don't want
But
to.
yeah,
And I'm so grateful,
exactly.
right, that you know that stuff. And so, yeah,
And
I
it's
really,
okay to ask the questions because it is so mysterious. Like, I guess that's just why I wanted to say that. Like,
yeah,
it's mysterious to all of us, and it's okay. Yeah.
it's
So
like partnership, right? Like, that's what I really look at, is like, who do you want on your team helping you get to where you want to go? And so, really, really partnering with people that are going to be supportive and nourishing to you. And it's like, it's a symbiotic relationship, right? Like, it's a give and give on both sides. And, choosing people that are going to be that for you.
yeah, yeah. And like you said, like it's okay to break up with your
Oh, it's
accountant.
totally okay to
Yeah.
break
I
up.
th I think it is kinda like the hairdresser, like, dilemma, right? Like,
What's that?
people they just got a referral for an accountant, they've been with them for a long time, even though they're not doing a good job at supporting them, they just kinda stay there because they feel bad, I guess. Like, have you ever tried to break up with a hairdresser? Like, it can be kind of awkward. I
I just didn't go back, right? But this, and we haven't really talked about human design much, but like, because I really like go for the generators. But like, if you're listening and you aren't a sacral being, like, I think this is where it also goes into place, like knowing and trusting your authority, right? Like, how do you make decisions? And um, I worked with someone
Yeah.
to do my website, and I mean, like, here's a lesson in not trusting my authority, right? Like, there were things that he was saying to me or that he did that I was like, mm-mm, like, in my body, I felt that, like, I was just like and I don't know what happened. And we ended up, I think he came back online or something. I don't remember. And I was frustrated the entire time we worked together. And I'm just like, Aaron, you did not trust what your body, right, was telling you. So really being in tune with, this is not where we go to our heads to make our decision. Like, this is truly a gut decision and what feels good for us.
Yeah. Well, and I have a totally open head. I don't know. Do you have a
Mm,
defined head or?
yeah, defined head and ajna. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, that
Hmm.
must be why I feel so good. I love talking to people with defined heads. But I have an undefined head, so like, and I'm new to human design, but I do find it's helpful for me to do a little bit of research. So my head's like, okay, I know what questions to ask, and I know a little bit. Like I have a little bit of a foundation, and then I try to really use my gut to make that final decision. But
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's anyone listening with the undefined head. I know that can be
Yeah. Oh,
really hard at first to let your head totally take a backseat, you know?
and I do want to say also too that that's really good that you brought that up. Thank you for sharing that. Is because there are questions that I want answered, right? Like, I need clarity in order for me to make my decision. Oh, and if you are emotionally defined, right? If you do need to ride your wave, it's okay for you to go meet with the CPA and to like ride that wave. Like, I don't think with CPAs I've ever felt that like they're very like, hey, call me when you want to, come work with me. So it hasn't been like make a decision now.
Yeah, they
But
usually don't pressure you. Yeah.
I really just want to put that out there that like if you are emotionally defined, ride your wave, right? Like, feel into that as you make your decision, because it can get us, if we're
Yeah.
not.
No, I don't have a defined emotional center, but I have a lot of channels there. And I definitely feel like if the person's good at selling, I'm a really easy mark because I get so excited. Like I don't know if it's because I have that what is that channel? Um
I
it's
totally do.
the
I've bought on highs so many times and then
yeah,
I've regretted it.
yeah. And then like a day later I'm like, what was I thinking? Like this I don't even like this person really. Like
Totally. Yes.
uh so yeah, I mean I don't know exactly what it's like, right? To have a but I
Yeah.
don't know. I have that 41. I have a lot of centers in that 4130 channel,
Hmm.
which is really intense emotionally.
Yeah.
And that is kind of how it is. I'm just
Yeah.
uh, like on this super duper high and I have this ideal, I don't know, this weird idea of in my imagination. And then when I come back to reality, it's like, yeah,
Yeah. And I think, like, and this is, being really undefined. Like, I have a lot of undefined center, so I can like pick up on a lot of energy, like when I'm in their auric space and all of that. So just
mhm,
like, just giving yourself the time and the space, like nothing, and this is just overall business, right? Like, nothing needs to be rushed, right? Nothing needs
yeah,
to be solved today, right? Like, really feel into your decision and what feels good for you and taking time. I mean, I always say, like, when we think we've slowed down, like, slow down even more, right? And
yeah,
so really just giving yourself such ample amount of time and space
yeah.
to hire when it feels good for you.
I love that. And I do think we rush into getting accountants because maybe I don't know if people I don't know why people think it's really not that big of a deal. They just need their taxes done. But I do think you could give yourself a good 6 months
Mm.
to interview a few people and make a decision, especially like you were saying, this person's going to be with you. It's like like getting a good therapist. I feel like
Yeah.
they're going to be ideally it'd be great if they would be with you for the next 20 years of your business journey. And that deserves the respect and the consideration of, a good 6 months, I think.
I think it also comes from maybe that place of like fear, right? Because we're taught like, oh, we need a CPA, right? And so we're just like, oh, we have to hurry up, we have to hurry up, we have to get because we're in business versus like, it's okay, right? Like, you can use a spreadsheet, which I'm so glad you said that. It's just like, use a spreadsheet while you're trying to figure out who you're going to work with, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
totally fine. And so if you're someone that's thinking of leaving your job, or you want to start a business, that's something that you can do while you're still at your company. Like, I don't think a lot of us also talk about I mean, I kind of talked about the visualization part, but I don't think a lot of us talk about like, okay, so who's the person that has the business? Like there's things that we do now to get us prepared for the person that we're, going to become. So if you're thinking of starting your business, then start interviewing CPAs now. Start, like there's things that you can do to support yourself now so that you
Yeah.
are prepared when the time comes.
Yeah. And really, if you do all those things that I said before, you should have
Hmm.
most of your bases covered.
Yeah.
And especially if you set aside that 10% and are paying a little bit throughout the year, like you really won't get into trouble by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't need a CPA to do any of those things. But if you do those things and the CPA like comes on board, I tell you what, they're gonna be
Yes.
like singing hallelujah. They're gonna be so happy. They're gonna love you as a client. And be like, wow, this girl is amazing. So
Oh my gosh, you just brought up something, and I have always felt this way. Talk about mindset. It's like I want to be the best client, and not from like at a girl, like, oh, you like me so much, but like just like how we want to have like amazing clients. Like I want to be an amazing client to my CPA. I want to pay them on time or early. I want to, answer their questions when they get back to me about something. Like just also thinking about the mindset of like what type of client do you want to be to your bookkeeper and what type of client do you want to be to your CPA, because
interesting. I haven't thought of that before. But yeah, I
like
like that.
I think it's really like I mean when I worked with my dad in the construction business, like I loved the attorneys and the CPAs that we worked, and the bonding agent, like it was so fun. And I think a lot of it was because I was just like, how can I, and not from a abandoning myself, right? But like, how can I make their job easier, right? Like, what can I
Yeah.
do that will help them help me? And so, just thinking about from that mindset shift of like, how can we be the best clients for the people that we work with as well? Because that's what we
Yeah.
want with, right? That's what we want.
Yeah.
That's what we
That's
want
what
in
we
our
want.
business, right?
Yeah, and it'd be ideal if the whole world was set up where we all supported each other, especially in this entrepreneurship, I think is really challenging, more challenging than a lot of people talk about. And we
Yeah.
really need to support each other.
Yeah.
But I know that's one thing that's fun about being a bookkeeper is whenever I come in, the accountants are super happy. And I just feel like
It's fun, right?
yeah, it's really fun for me, and they love talking to me most of the time, because they want to file things correctly. They want to do things correctly. They want to talk to their clients, but it's really hard, if you have a client that their books are all over the place and you don't even know where to start. And like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good visual, but I can't really think of one, but it's a lot. Like I can tell
Yeah.
you from the back end, like it is a lot. You're coming in blind. You
Well,
don't
you're
really
having to
know.
like almost tear apart in order to rebuild, right?
You're
Like,
investigating, you're guessing a lot. Like you
yeah.
just, yeah,
And I truly believe, like this is a belief that I always hold, is like the bookkeeper and the CPA is always wanting to do what's best for me, right? Like, um, and so with that intention, right? Like they're trying to do what's best, but if they don't have, there's like actual physical data they need. So if the data isn't correct, it's like they always say, like, right? Like shit in, shit out, right? Like the data is
yeah,
on, like whatever they produce for you is only as good as the data that you give them.
yeah.
So just
And
being,
they're not allowed to like fudge numbers either. So
yeah,
like let's say you have a QuickBooks file and you're doing your invoicing wrong and your income is double what you actually received because it's recording it double. That happens quite a bit.
yeah,
Um, the CPA can't just file something
change it.
different
Yeah.
because that's what it says in there. So then you're paying twice, like twice the amount you should be.
Yeah. Oh, one
Um,
thing I want to add is like also like I know when I interview the CPAs, I would ask like they a lot of times they'll have like a tax organizer, right? Like you could even just get that from them to kind of see like what are the questions that they're going to ask for you from you to be able to see if you're kind of doing those tasks in your business so that you can give that to them.
like a spreadsheet that says this is what I need from you for tax
Yeah.
season. Like I need this form and this form. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's almost like they would always call it like a tax organizer, but it's just basically like I mean, if they already had the like the second year, they just kind of print off some of the already data that you have. But the first year, it's just like, what type of business is it, LLC or S Corp or whatever? And like,
Oh,
all
yeah.
of these questions that they kind of go through and ask. Like, and so then that way you're like, oh, I'm not doing that, or do I need to be doing that, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I know I have one of those too,
Yeah, it's
which a lot
helpful.
of people don't know the answers to, so we go over it together.
Yeah. It's really nice to have, it's that's an easy way that saves you and the CPA time that you can
Yeah.
give to your client, and then they can kind of come back and be like, okay, what are the things that I'm missing here?
But to be honest, from my experience, when I've come in, an accountant has been doing the book work, it's not being done. I just think maybe they're too busy.
I think that's it. And I have worked with several CPAs and I've asked them like technical questions. Like, this is where I think, listeners, that you really see the value of each, right? Because the bookkeeper is like the the record keeper, right? And
Yeah,
then
and the software expert, and they know how to keep the records correctly.
the
Yeah.
CPA is your like tax accountant advisor that helps you strategize, right, for taxes and things of that sort. Because I have asked CPAs to help me, like when I was learning about QuickBooks, and they for sure have other bookkeepers that they work with. And I think that's beautiful, right? Because if you think about your zone of genius, if what they're doing, like we literally have bandwidth in our brain, right? Like, so if they want to focus and get really good at tax planning, they don't want to be clouding up their mind with bookkeeping, right? And vice
Yeah.
versa. And so I think
And
it's
and bookkeeping is kind of like a, I don't wanna say busy work, but it's like a doing job.
mm-hmm.
And if you're super duper busy, like strategizing all these like plans for people and filing reports, right? They do a lot of filing, all the tax reports, like it's just time consuming to do bookkeeping,
Mm-hmm.
and then it
Yeah.
just ends up being done in a hurry or just not being done at all.
Yeah. And I think
Like,
that's why they got into taxes, right? Like they got into taxes because they like the taxes because they know about bookkeeping, right? I mean, that's an option, but
yep.
they go to school, they learn to do the taxes. And so I think it's such a beautiful thing of like knowing where your zone of genius is and knowing your people, like having a bookkeeper, having an advisor to help support you.
Yeah. And it can be really hard to kind of explain what bookkeeping is. That's something I've struggled with,
Hmm.
to tell clients like
What it
exactly
is.
what it is, what I'm doing, because I just say like, well, I found the best thing is to say I'm a record keeper and a QuickBooks software expert.
Hmm.
But until you like actually have a bookkeeper, it might be kind of difficult for you to like to quite understand. Because you're not really, I mean, you may be in the software. From my experience, I haven't seen that many business owners that are in the software all day. Like they do a little bit here and there and they don't know it very well. Um, so we're really making sure everything is done perfectly. And
Hmm.
also, I did want to say too, if you have a bookkeeper, they should be sending you monthly reports. I do know of some people who say they offer bookkeeping, but then if you want a report, you have to give them 3 months,
3 months for what?
like 3 months, like notice to
I'm like,
get
do
you a
not
report.
compute.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Do not confuse. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I was really shocked. And I think the reason why is because they have a lot of clients and they need 3 months to get your books up to date. And I don't know, that's me just
Um,
guessing, but like, um, just be aware. I personally, I do my book clients books every month and I send them updated reports.
yeah.
And
Oh
you, as a
my.
business owner, I think you really need that to see what's going on, to make quarterly, goals and decisions. And so if your bookkeeper is not doing that, then and the reports, and they can't explain the reports, or you ask them a question and they don't know, then you should probably look into getting a different one.
I agree with
So,
all that. And I was going to
okay.
say, like for bookkeeping, to me, like what is the value? It's it's like you get to help us have the pulse on the company, right? Like that's the way I look at it. It's like you get like give us real-time information for us to, like you said, make decisions. And so every month, like, like looking at your profit and loss statement, or, are your bank accounts reconciled? Are your, like, what are you in net profit? Like, just having this ongoing, it's like a living, breathing, to me, it's like a living, breathing um thing, right, in your organization. And so
Yeah, I
having
love that.
having it monthly, like, for sure, because I mean, gosh, so much can change in your business in 3 months. Like, 3 months, that's like a lifetime ago. So
Yep. Yeah, okay. Great, that's helpful because I'm not really sure on the other side, like, how people when you have a finance background too, so
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
always trying to think of someone that comes in without any experience. How do you teach them? How do you
I would look at it like you're taking the information, like it's almost like an input and an output, right? All of the information in terms of like sales, and I mean, that's really the incoming, right? And then the outgoing,
Yeah.
the expenses, you know, who are you paying? What
Well, and
courses?
if you're a coach, you can, run reports to see, like, what courses you're making. If you have a good bookkeeper and they hook up the software right, they can itemize the income. So, like, this is your income from your group coaching, your one-on-one, from this one client. This is how much you made from them that year. So, like, ideally, like, that would be
Yeah, it can be like as
ideal.
detailed as you want, or it can be, and yeah, I think it just gives you a lot of data in order to be able to make decisions. And um, yeah, it's really just, I think the income part is the simple part in terms of the bookkeeping. You can correct me if I'm off, but it's like the expenses and am I off?
I wouldn't say that, no.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
but maybe that's just, like, a personal thing to me,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
But I do find people, especially if you're using, like, FreshBooks or QuickBooks or anything like that to do your invoicing, there's a lot of mistakes that you can make there.
Okay, sorry. I'm not talking about invoicing. I'm talking about like when you're looking at like your P&L, like you got like it's just
Oh,
basically
I
like your
see.
income, right?
Okay.
And then you've got like all your little expenses. But yeah, for sure. Yeah, how you're invoicing. Sorry, forgot about
Oh,
that
no.
part. Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking about all the, like, mistakes that I've cleaned up with invoicing, and I don't really like doing that, so I was like, "Oh."
No, that's
But
good. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's true, like,
Like your
yeah,
categories in your
your
income are just like,
categories.
it's just like income or group coaching or whatever, right? Like
Yeah,
whatever you got. And then you've got like your costs. I mean, depending on what type of business you have got cost of goods sold and your different type of expenses and like all of the categories within that. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
And that's why I wanted to mention before that if you just started out and you have an accountant, please ask them about categories because
yes.
it can be really overwhelming. You don't really know, like, not everything is a write-off in business. Like, some people
And
don't
don't
know
be
that.
buying things just to write off.
Yeah, don't buy things just to write it off. Yeah, so that you can that's kind of what we're talking about before, right? So you don't have to pay taxes. Um, and also, like, especially with I see a lot of coaches, they really wanna write off everything as a business expense, and that's just not, like, how business operates, like, your clothes, so you can look cute on camera, like, your little, like, decor in your house, so you can have cute videos, like, your trip that you went on where you did your video for marketing, like, you can't you can't write off everything, and that's why, like, if you're hesitant to ask those questions, like, please just ask your accountant, like, just ask him,
Yeah.
and or, like, let him know, "Hey, I have no idea, like, I'm gonna be asking you all these questions," the expense categories can be, like, really like, I think it can stop people from doing it because
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, I don't know what categories to make," so don't let that stop you.
What do you typically see? Like, what are some of the things that you see when people first come to you that you want to be able to share with others so that they don't necessarily like the learning curve, right? Like save them the learning curve.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, it could be different for other bookkeepers, but what I commonly see are just books that aren't being done right. Like, usually nothing's been done right.
Like, are they even having a software program? Like, they're not even having
Usually
a software.
they're in a software program, but um they're just not correct. Like it's like there's so many little things. Like you can
Mm,
hook up your book account and create your banking account and create 3 different accounts with the same bank. Nothing's been added, nothing's been reconciled, or it's all added by rules, but the rules are all wrong, and nothing's been reconciled. So I think, it can be easy to think that once you hook up your bank and everything's in the software, that and then that like it's just kind of done.
it's not a set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just see like just and I don't want to, like, I'm not judging anyone. But I kind of wanted to touch on the fact that most of the books I see are wrong to make people feel better. Like,
Yeah.
if your books are wrong, that's like the norm. That's really common. And I think it's just because you're super busy. So the norm that I see is that a lack of awareness about spending and profit, taxes, really no awareness about what their real profit is, um, a, a, a lack of education about what to do with taxes, just feeling just overwhelmed by taxes in general, and just this general feeling of just overwhelmed about everything accounting. So when I step in, I think I said this before, it's usually an incredible sense of relief for the client and for the accountant. Um, and and yeah, I just want to emphasize again the reason why I wanted to say this is because I want people to know that if this is you, that you're not doing anything wrong. Really, the system has kind of failed us, and it's the normal,
Yeah.
you know.
That's the thing. It's like we aren't taught this, right? Like,
Yeah, and you see the outside perspective and all the marketing, and you think everything's great, but really on the other side, you know, things can look quite a bit different.
I mean, I don't even know if in the accounting, like when I took all of my classes for my CFP, like for sure there was none of that. There was one personal finance class. And the only reason why I ever took that is because I had to sit for the CFP. It's just like that.
Yeah,
I say all that to say, like, the people that aren't, that's not your drive desire. It's not even barely taught for the people that want to do it, much less the people that don't want to do it. And so
yeah,
giving
and
yourself such grace and compassion that, like, it's not talked about, in the real world. Like, it's not like, here you go, this is what's going
yeah,
on. And then you,
and even in the coaching world, it's not talked about much,
mm-mm,
the education system, like you said.
yeah.
Yeah, I would love to. I also would love, you just briefly talked about it, but your experience into finance with your first job that you had doing the book work. Because I think your experience is like everyone's experience.
You talking about when I decided to leave financial planning and go work for my dad in his company?
Yeah.
So it literally started out with, like, I can help you, like, get his credit cards, kind of like, here we go back to, like, basic
Basics.
bookkeeping, right? He's like, I have so many credit cards. Like, I have this gas card and I have this gas card that the guys use. And, like, I have this, I mean, like, literally probably 10 to 12 cards. I'm like, why are we using so many cards? And so
Yeah.
that's what I went in with, like, oh, I can just, work with you a little bit with some of this stuff and get some of this stuff cleaned up, right? Here we go back to, like, owner hat of, like, I just want to go out and, like, serve my clients. I need somebody that I can support. And here's the other thing, that I trust, right? Like,
Yes.
I think I had a very unique perspective because my dad would not have just let anybody come in and have complete passwords and knowledge. And I mean, like, I just was given the keys to the kingdom, right? But that
Yeah.
level of trust was there. And also, like, we still had, I don't know what it's called on the general liability policy, but there was, like, it wasn't called embezzlement, but, like, if I for somehow, like, took money, there was insurance on that and stuff. So But, coming in and like this fire hose of like me getting in and then realizing all of these different things and like, why are we doing it this way? And it's such a like, there's the strategy or there's the, I don't want to say the rules of business, but I don't know the word I want to use. And then there's also like, there's so much mindset to business. And so my dad and my uncle had theoretically bought the company from my grandfather that started it, right? And my grandfather had just started it from the sense of like, let me just do something extra because I'm already retired, right? And then we call them the boys or the brothers, they took it over and then created actual like income for families, Um, and then getting in and seeing so much of why are we doing it this way? Oh my goodness, do you know how much you're paying in interest per month here? Payroll, like and a lot of mindset shifts, right? So I always said like I came in with a target on my back because I came in with all of these ideas and everyone's like, no, why would we do that? But like simple things that I was able, it didn't happen overnight, but like changing payroll to every 2 weeks because the amount of time it took me to do payroll for 30 people,
Mm,
it probably only took me an extra hour to do it for every 2 weeks as it did for every, week,
mhm.
and so just all of these questions that I had is like, why are we doing it? And looking back, I mean, you know, everybody kind of wears their hat. And here we go back to why it's so important, I believe, that we really work through our money relationship because there were things that my dad and my uncle were not paying attention to because it was an
Triggering.
emotional thing with money, and
Yeah.
I mean, I really want to infuse that into the world of like really talking about money because I don't know if I mean, there was one other company that I would during the 2009 recession, right? Like, I mean, lots of people were like they call it robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know what I mean? Like they were doing jobs in the construction industry just to have cash flow to then pay your payroll to then be able to, continue, right? Like it was, and also there probably were lots of companies that were totally cash flow fine, right? And
Yeah.
so the mindset of looking at the money and how do we want to um how do we want to feel with the money and how do we want to interact with the money, and it's almost like depending on how we feel about it, we ignore it, right? And then it gets to a
Mhm.
point where it's so big you can't ignore it
And
anymore.
and complicated and kind of intertangled. It's like that's what I do mainly in my job. I come in and I like detangle everything and then try to simplify everything down.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been that's why I love your experience so much is because that's what I see. What you've experienced is what I see most often.
Yeah.
And I think it can be avoided.
Yeah, and it was a lot of learning, right? Like, I mean, in Texas, there were different taxes and when you even spoke to this of like as a business owner, knowing your numbers, knowing how things work. And my dad probably fell into that category of like, oh, the CPA knows what they're doing, And so then when I started really diving in and I'm like, why are we paying so much taxes because of the way we didn't understand the way franchise tax worked, right? And so I think going back to bandwidth and what, as a business owner we have, and also how imperative it is to like get people on your team that really support you because the amount of money that I was able to save them because I understood how it worked. I mean,
I love
it's,
that.
you know, um,
Well, and a
and
lot of times you think, "Oh, like, I don't wanna pay them for that. I don't wanna pay for that." But really, in the long run, you are saving money. So if you could shift that mindset, it'd be super, super helpful.
that is one thing, like, that is a really good point you said, because a lot of business owners look at, like, you had let's just take my family's business, for example. Like, you had the people that would go out and physically build the water plants, like they were an asset to them, right? But like the people in the office were considered a liability in the sense, right? Because we're not, air quotes, making you money, but we are, right? Like just in a different way. And I have so many thoughts on like everyone is valuable within a company, right? Like, um, but the idea of like we think we're paying out versus how much is that person with their knowledge and their expertise, um and years of experience and the questions, like they just save they shrink the amount of time, right? Because you're able to utilize them with their gifts.
Yeah. Yeah, I thanks, Erin. I love hearing your story.
Yeah, and I think that, I think with anything, right? It's just awareness. It's just like, where are we? And if we can drop the shame, if we can drop the judgment, if we can stop comparing ourselves, which our brain is naturally going to do that. But like, if you're going to
Yeah,
compare where you were last week or last year in your business and really use that to propel you
yeah,
to, you know,
and
where are you going
realize
towards?
that everyone probably has, the money mindset, like, issues. Like, people probably look at us and think, "Oh, well, they know all this stuff and they probably have it made," but no, I'm still working
No.
through things, and, it's yeah, I think money mindset is probably one of the most like that, and maybe relationships, like, the most triggering kind of, like, mindset stuff to work on.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to say something before about you mentioned, going slow,
Mhm. Mhm.
and we've talked about a bit through this, but I wanted to say something about that really fast. It's kind of shifting gears a little bit. Is that
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I know a lot about trauma, right? Which kind of goes hand in hand with mindset work because, the mindset work, the idea is to push yourself a little bit outside of your boundary, right? And then embody
Mhm.
that new level. But our bodies are actually wired to go faster when we're stressed. That's like how we were designed.
Yep.
Like, um, you know,
Oh, wait, get the hell out of here.
yeah, we got to get out of here. Get out of here. The bear's chasing us, or whatever. We've all heard that.
Yeah.
So it can be really hard to go slow because it is anti-intuitive.
Yes.
And I wanted to briefly step on that because, or not step on that, but speak into that because I don't know. I know when I learned that it made it so much easier for me to slow down
Mm.
because I
Mhm.
could just kind of let my body freak out a little bit and then be like, oh yeah, like that's normal. And I know that like everyone's probably heard of the idea that you need to slow down, but for some reason it's really hard to do, right? And
And it
so
feels, yeah, wildly uncomfortable. Like
it
not
does.
just not just the years, like not just our wiring and our like survival mentality. And also we have, um added onto it by our
Yeah.
rush and whole and hustle culture, right?
The America, the corporate world,
Yeah.
like yeah,
So
the
we've
and everything with
amplified that.
AI and technology, like it's even harder now. Yeah,
Yeah. And
I see
so
that.
I think for, I mean, we typically attract the people that we are, right? So the the effort for people like us is not doing more, it's doing less. It's sitting still,
Yeah,
it's being quiet, it's, not having your calendar packed. It's all of the things that think, like you just said, counterintuitive. It's like, oh, well, what else do I need to do to fix
yeah.
this, right? It's
I'll
like,
feel so much better once I get this to-do list done,
right.
especially as an entrepreneur, like, you're just like, if I could just get caught up,
Yeah,
you know?
versus the, no, I need to slow down. I need to take some time to make this decision. I need to, you know, have a slower morning, or I need to have my quiet time where no one else interrupts me, or whatever it might be.
Have
That
uh,
you'll know you're on the right track, air quotes, when it feels really uncomfortable, right? Like that. That's
yeah.
the stuff that, like, you know,
Yeah, and I think
That
it takes practice, right?
oh, 100%.
Like you have to practice that, and then it will get better. But like money's so triggering
Mhm.
that like I just
Yeah,
think it
even
can
the
be
word, and I do
really
wanna say this, like I said this at the very beginning, right? Like, even the word money, right? So if you were just to
yeah,
replace that with currency,
currency. I like that.
see how that feels in your body when you say currency, right? Because
Yeah.
I think all of us collectively, right? Like, I did a podcast on this around generational trauma with the Great Depression. Like, that is inherently in ourselves, right? Until we transform that. And so money is that, just as that word can be so triggering versus like currency, like it's meant to move and flow. And so just even trying that on.
Yeah, I feel like I'd never heard that before, and I can feel a difference like
Yeah.
in my body for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
This has been so good.
yeah, has it? Okay.
Yes, so good. Okay, my friend, I've had so much fun having this conversation. I have a feeling it probably will not be the last. And I thank you for your time and all of your knowledge.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would love to be here.